You know, I've got a letter to the president. He's just down the road from me. I understand that from time to time, at least people in his office listen to or watch this program. And so it's kind of a knock-on or a follow-on from the conversation that I had with Bob Ney just a few minutes ago, former Republican Congressman Bob Ney, who's now a reporter for the Talk Radio News Service. And here it is. I'll just share it with you straight up. Dear Mr. President, now that Russia and Syria have said that they're willing to work with you and with Secretary of State Kerry, who was, by the way, brilliant, on resolving the issue of chemical weapons, it's time for you to follow the famous advice given to LBJ by Senator George Aiken back during the Vietnam War and declare victory and come home. I understand that you've reserved network television time for tomorrow night to pitch the nation on using military action in Syria. Well, here's a thought. Use that time instead to discuss some of the really pressing issues facing Americans. I mean, first, declare victory. Hey, look, we did this. We got rid of the weapons. But then you could call for Congress to immediately throw all their attention into raising the minimum wage to $10 an hour, where it was back in 1968. That would immediately produce billions of dollars in stimulus for the economy. According to a recent study by Restaurant Opportunity Centers United, it would lift more than 6 million Americans out of poverty. Or you can call for the strengthening of Social Security by eliminating the payroll tax cap. That would mean that Bill Gates and I would pay the same percentage of our income into Social Security. Literally overnight, the Social Security system would be made whole for at least the next 75 years and probably much longer. Or, Mr. President, what about using your television time to talk to Americans about Obamacare? A Kaiser Family Foundation poll back in April of this year found that 42% of Americans don't even know that Obamacare is still the law. Kaiser Family Foundation poll from last month found that 51% of Americans say they don't have enough information about Obamacare to understand how it's going to impact them or their families. Or here's one of my favorite ideas. Use your TV time tomorrow night to call for rolling back the incredibly destructive tax breaks and policies of the Reagan years. Roll back the Reagan tax cuts on millionaires and billionaires. And eliminate Reagan's program to allow CEOs to be compensated with stock options. This would return CEO pay back to the 30-to-1 ratio it was in America before Reagan. And it would go a long ways towards restoring our middle class. I know my friends in organized labor would love this idea. You could call for a repeal of Taft-Hartley. Bring democracy back into the workplace. At the very least, call for the passage of card check by telling Americans to support the Employee Free Choice Act. Or how about calling for a worldwide global tax on carbon? If the carbon polluters actually had to pay a modest amount for dumping their waste in our air, for example, $50 a ton, then immediately solar and wind power become more economical than fossil fuels. It would jumpstart an industry, it'd rebuild the economy, and it would go a long way towards stopping global warming. There are a lot of things that this country desperately needs. And another war is not one of them. President Obama. Sir, I voted for you, I worked for you, and I respect you. If you're going to use your political capital, many of us would really like to see you do it on those kinds of issues, rather than on bombing a country that most Americans can't even find on a map. This is not rocket science. John Kerry came out, and he was asked straight up, Secretary of State John Kerry, the man who's holding the office that was first held by Thomas Jefferson. Think about that for a minute. I'm sure John Kerry thought about that when he said he'd give up being a senator to become Secretary of State. The office that Thomas Jefferson held in the George Washington administration. John Kerry, when he was asked straight up by a reporter today. What could Syria do that would cause the United States to say, we're not going to bomb you? And Kerry came right out and said, actually, I got the exact quote here someplace. Here we go. Kerry said, sure. He could turn over every single, they said, is there anything that Assad could do that would cause you not to bomb him? And Kerry said, sure. He could turn over every single bit of his chemical weapons to the international community in the next week. Turn it over, all of it, without delay, and allow a full and total accounting. And so the Russian foreign minister, Mr. Lavrov, says, hey, we see your 5 and we'll raise it 5. He said, we'll not just, help take control of this internationally, but we'll destroy these things. I give you the exact quote from the Russian foreign minister. He said, we don't know whether Syria will agree with this, but if the establishment of international control over chemical weapons in the country will prevent attacks, then we will immediately begin to work with Damascus, the capital of Syria, for those of you who don't know. And we call on the Syrian leadership to not only agree to setting the chemical weapons storage sites under international control, but also, here's I see you and raise you, but also to their subsequent destruction. So then the question hung in the air for an hour, what's Syria going to say? And the foreign minister of Syria, the man who holds the Syrian equivalent of the seat that Thomas Jefferson once held in the George Washington administration that John Kerry now holds, the foreign minister of Syria, Walid al-Ma'alam, M-A-U-A-L-E-M, al-Ma'alam, Ma'alam, anyway, however you say it. He said, and I quote, this is from Reuters, via Reuters, Syria welcomes Russia's proposal for Damascus to put its chemical weapons under international control. We welcome it. So President Obama has interviews with all the networks tonight, and he's got primetime television tomorrow night for a national address. President Obama, please take the first couple of minutes and congratulate your brilliant Secretary of State on resolving an international incident in a way that is going to make the world a safer place, that's going to increase the international consensus that chemical weapons are evil things and should be destroyed, in a way that's going to bring together the United States and Russia, in a way that's going to reduce tensions in the region. Please take the first couple of minutes and congratulate your Secretary of State and yourself for walking the world up to the brink, and the other side blinked. And then spend the rest of your speech talking about Congress has, 28 days left? 39 days? Something like that. They got about a month before some really nasty stuff starts happening with regard to the budgets and things. You know what I'm talking about. Give them a legislative agenda. Let's raise the minimum wage. Let's let people unionize. Let's put people back to work. Make the government the employer of last resort. Restart the CCC. Roll back the Reagan tax cuts.